As soon as I woke up, I got out of bed and did my morning stretches. I squeezed a quick 10 minutes of cardio in before taking a shower and getting ready for school. As usual, I yelled at the cook a little because he got my omelet wrong again. That part of my morning was always so relaxing. I drove to school in my red sports car and parked in my usual spot. The valet was already waiting for me, as I requested. My school was very prestigious and very expensive, of course. Only the elite studied here. It was a parade of designer bags and expensive watches. It was heaven. I saw my boyfriend, Aiden, further down the hallway talking to his friends. I snuck up behind him and put his arm around my shoulders. "Hey, gorgeous," he said with that pearly white smile. "Hi," I replied with an enormous grin on my face, as always. From behind, I felt someone bump into me and drop something. Furious, I turned around and saw a mousy little substitute teacher fixing her glasses and dipping to pick up her books from the floor. "Watch it," I shouted at her, and I kicked one of her books across the hall. I grabbed Aiden's arm and dragged him away from there. I found an empty classroom, so I pushed him in there and closed the door behind us. "We're not supposed to be in here," he said, being the goody two-shoes he always was. "So? What are they gonna do?" I replied. I sat down on the teacher's desk and crossed my one leg over the other. I also undid the tie of my uniform a bit. The uniforms were cute, but very uncomfortable. "Aiden?" I asked with a flirtatious smile. "Sophia?" He asked back. "Where are you taking me for our anniversary?" I threw him a sheepish grin and could hardly contain my excitement. It was our 5-year anniversary. We had dated since we were kids. Our families were very close ever since we were in kindergarten together. My mom even told me Aiden's mom found him looking at engagement rings. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to plan something better than whatever you've got planned inside your head?" He asked me with a jokingly exhausted tone. "Of course I do. Why do you think I was so disappointed last time I threw myself a birthday party? But you always outdo my expectations. So where are we going this year, bunny?" "You'll just have to wait and see," he winked. I was about to reply to him, but a rude teacher interrupted us, so we had to leave the classroom. I didn't want to, and I didn't have to, but Aiden hated breaking rules. A few days later, we were sitting at the best table of the newest and most exclusive restaurant in the city. Almost everyone was turned away when they asked for a table, even elites like Aiden and I, but somehow we got a table, and the best table in the house nonetheless. "You really outdid yourself this year," I said, smiling ear to ear at him and looking over the menu. "Only the best for you, as always, Soph." He smiled back at me. A waiter approached us, asking Aiden directly what we would like to start with. He ordered our food, the most expensive dishes of course, and the waiter left. Aiden and I spent the evening gushing over each other, as we always did, and thinking about the years we spent together and how much we had been through together. He had just finished dessert, which was a delicious and sweet chocolate lava cake, when I saw Aiden start to stand up and reach into his pocket for something that looked like a small box. I couldn't help myself, so I stood up and shouted, "Yes!" But just as I did, the waiter was retrieving our plates from the table, which I knocked over with my hands, and my plate felt right on my chest. I looked in horror at my favorite dress, stained with molten chocolate all over the front. "Shoot," Aiden said, reaching over with a napkin to try and wipe the chocolate off. "What kind of waiter are you?" I yelled at our little waiter. "You're pathetic. I'll have you fired. Do you know who my parents are? I could get you thrown in jail with a single phone call." I continued shouting as our waiter shrunk. Aiden looked at me in a way he had never looked before and put the box back in his pocket. He quickly slipped the waiter a $20 bill and said he had prepaid the meal. He grabbed my wrist and we left the restaurant. I was in tears looking at my favorite dress completely ruined. I heard the doorbell ring as I finished getting ready for the biggest event of the year. The ball was finally here. I waited for my parents to open the front door and to hear Aiden's voice before I started walking down the stairs. The trail of my dress followed me down the stairs like a waterfall. My mom took hundreds of pictures of me. Aiden was wearing a new suit, and my parents were also dressed up. Aiden grabbed my hand, but didn't compliment me on how beautiful I looked or on my dress. He only gave me a polite-looking smile and led me towards the limousine parked outside. We arrived at the country club shortly, where we knew every single person, or at least those that mattered. We were surrounded by men in expensive suits, like Aiden's, and women in gorgeous gowns, like mine, but not exactly as beautiful. An enormous sign hung over the entrance of the main building. There was a spotlight on it. It read, "Annual Debutante Ball." Our community loved keeping old traditions alive, the debutante ball being the most important. It was really just an excuse for us young ladies to get up on a stage and have people throw roses at us and take pictures of us. The main event, which was the catwalk, was followed by a buffet. I was wearing a tiara and surrounded by people, but Aiden was the only one I wanted next to me. A waitress walked in front of me, and all the men's heads turned towards her. I felt a twinge of jealousy in the pit of my stomach. I excused myself from the crowd and sort of followed her. I watched from afar as she smiled at everyone. A big, bright smile coated in red lipstick. Tacky, in my opinion, but all the men seemed to buy it. They were giving her extra tips for every little thing she did, like handing them a drink. I was angry that a waitress was getting more attention than us, the debutantes. the ones this event was for. What was it about that girl? Her black apron was dirty, her shirt buttoned up all the way, her hair in a messy ponytail. She looked like a disaster. Then I saw Aiden. He saw her and smiled at her. He barely smiled at me when he saw me in my gown, but now he was smiling at a waitress. My blood boiled. I saw she was headed towards the pool to keep handing out the hors d'oeuvres, so I followed her. As soon as I had the opportunity, I stuck my heels out and made her trip. I merely wanted her to fall and spill the drinks she was carrying, but she slipped and fell into the pool. She screamed and everyone turned towards her to see what had happened, but she wasn't properly coming up from the bottom of the pool. "Help!" she managed to shout. "I can't swim!" I saw someone running from the corner of my eye and swiftly jump into the pool. They both emerged from the pool dripping water, and I saw that it was Aiden who jumped in to save her. He was carrying her in his arms. I wanted to shout at him to drop her, but I didn't want to make a fool out of myself. The scowl on my face grew deeper as I watched my boyfriend carry some common waitress back inside through the kitchen doors. I couldn't take it anymore. I was upset. He should have been with me all night, but instead he was off somewhere else, and now he was getting all close to a waitress. I stormed off in a rage towards the limousine and yelled at the driver to take me home. My face was pouting and my arms were crossed the entire way home. A few months after the ball, I hadn't quite forgiven Aiden for ditching me, but he seemed mad at me too. He suddenly treated me differently. He stopped gifting me flowers and purses. He stopped getting me my favorite chocolates. Whenever he took me out, it was always at some regular restaurant, never to the expensive ones we frequented. He gave me stuff from time to time, but it was always pretty cheap stuff like a teddy bear, instead of what he usually gave me, a necklace for example, or a bracelet. I tried to look happy whenever he gave me a present, but I couldn't help frowning, and in return, he looked disappointed, but in me, not in himself. I didn't understand why he had suddenly become so cheap. He even started dressing differently. He switched his expensive shoes for regular sneakers and stopped wearing nice brands of clothing, opting instead for basic clothes like jeans and a t-shirt. I tried everything I could think of to bring back the spark in our relationship, even a weekend trip to Paris, but nothing worked. He always looked indifferent when he looked at me. I didn't know if I had done anything wrong or if it was him, but I needed to fix this. He was my future husband. Everyone expected us to get married eventually. I finally came up with an idea to bring the spark back. He needed to see me at my best, as the center of attention. After a week of begging, my dad finally agreed to throw me a party for my birthday. It was going to be perfect. I bought an incredibly expensive and beautiful dress, gorgeous enough to put all the dresses at the debutante ball to absolute shame. It was puffy and silky and fit me like a glove. I looked like a princess in it. The day of my party finally arrived. Our mansion looked like a castle. It was full of flowers and lights, and it smelled like delicious pastries. My dad had red carpets put on every floor, so it really did feel like a castle. I got ready upstairs, where I slipped into my gown and decorated my neck with a brilliant diamond necklace that my grandma gifted me. As I looked in the mirror, I felt in my heart that there was no way Aiden could keep being cold and distant, seeing me dressed so beautifully, like an angel in comparison to the rest. As my guests arrived, my parents directed them towards the bottom of the enormous staircase. As I descended, I enjoyed the sound of people gasping as they saw me, and the compliments they gave my parents regarding my appearance. The best part of it, though, was Aiden. He was standing on the last step of the staircase, ready for me to hold his arm so he could lead me to the ballroom. "You look beautiful," he whispered in my ear. I smiled to myself because he finally came back to me. We danced several times, being the most handsome couple at the party. I felt as if we were dancing on a cloud. After a few songs, Aiden disappeared. I looked for him, pretending to be nonchalant so people wouldn't think he stood me up on my own birthday. But there was panic in my eyes. I couldn't find him anywhere. Not dancing, not eating, not chatting. He was nowhere to be seen. When I finally thought of checking the last place where he should be, I busted through the kitchen doors, and there he was. My boyfriend was leaning on the wall in the smelly kitchen, and he was chatting with some girl. The look on his eyes that was once directed at me, a look of affection and amusement, it was now directed at a waitress. Those angel eyes of his looked at her like she was his world. Aiden spotted me, and his eyes grew wide. The girl also turned around, and to my surprise, I saw the girl I had tripped into a pool a few months ago. I gasped and ran out of the kitchen. "Sophia!" I heard Aiden shouting behind me. I ran through the party and out into the garden. "Sophia, wait!" Aiden was running after me. I finally collapsed onto a bench, surrounded by roses in bloom. "Aiden, how could you?" I gasped between sobs. "It's my birthday, and you're off talking to some waitress?" I shouted. "Sophia, don't act like you didn't see this coming," he said coldly. "What else could I possibly do? She's not just a waitress. She has a name. It's Natalia, and she's the most amazing girl I've ever met," he continued. "Is this why you don't spoil me as you used to? You spend your money on some gold digger now?" I cried. "Yes, I I do spend my money on her and on dozens of other people because she opened my eyes. You're dressed like a princess, spending daddy's money left and right on a party which won't last more than one night, while others are working 3 jobs just to keep their kids in school," he shouted at me. "Well, how is this my fault?" I sobbed. "It's not, but the least you can do is be empathetic. The most you can do is help, which is what I do now. I'm in love with her because she's the opposite of you, Sophia." He looked at me with a complete lack of emotion. "We're done," was the last thing he said as he walked out of my life. Suddenly, the red in my necklace around my neck seemed to suffocate me, so I yanked it off and threw it on the ground as I continued crying from my broken heart.